So as you are all aware of the anatomy of thyroid, so this is the thyroid gland, uh, um, and it is this is the left lobe, right lobe, and the isthmus connects the both the lobes of thyroid. And hello, I want to hear from any of the student. Am I audible? Are you guys there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Okay. So this is the thyroid gland. This is the left and the right lobe, which is connected by the isthmus, and it lies right below the cricothyroid cartilage, and the gland lies anterior to the trachea. You are all aware about the anatomy, and you can go through the picture later on. Okay. So the embryologically, the thyroid descends with the thyroglossal duct into the neck and expands after the thyroglossal duct atrophies. And the thyroid follicles, they develop from 9 to 12 fetal weeks, and well-developed colloid follicles are seen at 14 weeks of gestation. Normal thyroid gland, it weighs around 15 to 25 grams. Okay. Now this is the normal histology microscopic picture of a thyroid gland. These are the many follicles, and these are lined. Each follicle is lined by follicular epithelial cells, and in the lumen, it is filled with colloid. This is an example of an inactive follicle, and this is an example of an active follicle. What is the difference? In the active follicle, the follicular epithelial cells are active into the synthesis of thyroid hormone. So this leads to scalloping of the colloidal lumen in the margins. This means that the colloid is scalloped out because of the increased production of thyroid hormone. Okay. And in short, I will tell you about like which IHC or immune marker is specific for thyroid. So one is thyroglobulin, another is TTF, and now this thyroglobulin will show cytoplasmic positivity. It will be positive both in the lumen as well as in the follicular epithelial cells, in the cytoplasm of the follicular epithelial cells as well as the lumen. And this picture shows positivity, nuclear positivity for TTF1 marker. Both these markers are TTF1 is specific for thyroid. And there is another stain that is chromogranin stain. It highlights the C cells. We'll be discussing about this later on because there's a tumor, medullary carcinoma, which arises from C cells, and chromogranin stain is specific for that. Okay, fine. Now, what maintains the homeostasis in the hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis? What balances the production of the thyroid hormones? So there is a negative feedback loop. Okay, this is the hypothalamus is secreting thyroid releasing hormone, which has an action on pituitary gland, which stimulates the pituitary to produce thyroid stimulating hormone, which again acts on the thyroid gland to produce the thyroid hormones. So what maintains the balance here? There is a negative feedback loop. If there is excessive production, then the thyroid will act on the pituitary, and in turn it will act on the hypothalamus, maintaining a balance. Here we can see that thyroid gland is producing thyroid hormones. Uh, at the genetic level, you can see in the nucleus there is a target gene which has thyroid response elements. Okay, TREs, that is called as thyroid response elements, and this is the thyroid receptor. It is attached to this thyroid gene now, and it is in dimerized state with another receptor which is known as retinoid X receptor. So when thyroid hormone binds to the thyroid receptor, so it you all have read all this, the mechanisms in the neoplasia chapter, the seventh chapter in Robbins. So I won't go in detail, but the basic concept is the thyroid hormone is binding to the thyroid receptor. Ultimately, it will lead to the removal of the co-repressors, and ultimately it will lead to the transcription of this gene, and hence the thyroid hormone acts. Now, another mechanism which is maintaining the autonomy. So one is the another mechanism is thyroid autonomy. So what is this? Basically, here the thyroid gland becomes independent of the TSH, which is produced by pituitary. So there is constitutive activation of cyclic AMP. Fine. So these are the main mechanisms. All right. Let me tell you that today's topic is very extensive, so we'll have to go a bit fast. Okay. Fine. Now we'll come to thyroid hormone biosynthesis. So basically, please look into this picture. The dietary iodine and this iodide is in iodide form, and there's an uptake of iodide by this is the follicular epithelial cells, and this is the lumen which contains colloid. So iodide uptake occurs inside the follicular epithelial cells. Then the iodide is bound to thyroglobulin. Basically, thyroglobulin is a glycoprotein which has tyrosine residues. So this iodide binds to the tyrosine residues of thyroglobulin. I've also already told you about an IHC marker also, that is thyroglobulin. And because it is present both in the follicular epithelial cells and the cytoplasm, so positivity is also seen both in both cells and colloid. So iodide binds to the tyrosine residues of the thyroglobulin, and it leads to the formation of either diiodotyrosine or monoiodotyrosine. And this reaction is known as oxidation. And when this diiodotyrosine, it can either couple with monoiodo, or diiodo may couple with itself. So when diiodo is coupling with monoiodo, then it is leading to the formation of T3. And when diiodo is coupling with itself, then it leads to the formation of T4 hormones. Okay, and this process is known as coupling. And finally, how is then thyroid hormone released into the bloodstream? How so that it will act? So this the proteolysis of this thyroglobulin occurs with the help of lysosomal enzymes, and hence the thyroid hormone is released into the bloodstream. Okay, now the main conditions which are associated with thyroid are either with excessive release of thyroid hormone or thyroid hormone deficiency, hypothyroidism, and or thyroid mass lesion. So basically, hyperthyroidism, thyrotoxicosis is a hypermetabolic state due to elevated circulating levels of T3, free T3, and T4. So it could be primary hyperthyroidism, which arises from an intrinsic thyroid abnormality, example, Graves' disease. I'll be discussing it later on. Secondary hyperthyroidism, which occurs due to processes outside the thyroid, such as TSH secreting pituitary tumor. And tertiary hyperthyroidism, when there's too much of thyroid releasing hormone, and the pathology is in the hypothalamus. For example, TRH producing adenoma. Okay, so this table, it tells you about the various causes of thyrotoxicosis. Now, thyrotoxicosis can be associated with hyperthyroidism. It can be without hyperthyroidism. What does it mean? Basically, thyrotoxicosis is increased thyroid hormones. Now, it is when there is actual increase in biosynthesis of thyroid hormones, then it is known as thyrotoxicosis associated with hyperthyroidism. And if there is increase in thyroid hormones, but there is no increase in production, the increase in thyroid hormones is due to some other reason, maybe due to destruction of the thyroid gland, due to inflammation, etc., then it is thyrotoxicosis, not associated with hyperthyroidism. And what are the causes? The primary causes are Graves' disease. It is one of the most common causes. That is diffuse toxic hyperplasia in 85% of cases. Second is hyperfunctioning toxic nodular goiter. Another is hyperfunctioning toxic adenoma. And rarely iodine-induced hyperthyroidism. You should remember all these four causes. Secondary will be TSH secreting pituitary adenoma, which is rare. And in the second category, we have granulomatous recurrent thyroiditis, subacute lymphocytic thyroiditis, struma ovariae, which is an ovarian teratoma with thyroid production, and factitious thyrotoxicosis, that is due to exogenous thyroxine intake. Okay, so the clinical, I'll discuss these Graves, multinodular goiter, etc. in detail one by one, and the clinical features will be taken up by Dr. Rosny from medicine. So, but you should know what is thyroid storm. So when there is abrupt onset of severe hyperthyroidism, then it is known as thyroid storm. It occurs in patients with Graves' disease, and here there is an acute elevation in the catecholamine levels, and it is a medical emergency. Another term, apathetic hyperthyroidism, that also you should know. It is a type of thyrotoxicosis which is occurring in the elderly, and here the clinical features are noted and the diagnosis is made during the laboratory workup. Okay, so first of all, we'll come to Graves' disease. It is the most common cause of endogenous hyperthyroidism. It has a triad. The triad comprises of hyperthyroidism, of course, that will be there. Second is infiltrative ophthalmopathy leading to exophthalmos. And third is infiltrative dermopathy, that is pretibial myxedema. Peak incidence 20 to 40 years of age, more in females. Genetic factors, I'll tell you this later on. The genetic factors, you should remember these genes: TCTLA4 and PTPN22 and the HLA-DR3 allele. Okay, so what is the pathogenesis of Graves' disease? You have learned this in the chapter immunity, that how does autoimmunity occur. So basically there is a breakdown in self-tolerance to the autoantigens, leading to the formation of multiple autoantibodies. Okay, and these the autoantibodies which is occurring in Graves' disease are the very specific one is thyroid stimulating immunoglobulin, thyroid growth stimulating antibody, and TSH binding inhibitor immunoglobulins. So what happens? This immunoglobulin is a type of IgG antibody which binds to the TSH receptor. So the TSH is not binding to TSH receptor, but this antibody is binding, and it will mimic the action of TSH. So, and thus it will stimulate the adenylyl cyclase and increase the release of thyroid hormones. Second, thyroid growth stimulating antibody. It acts against the TSH receptor, leading to proliferation of increased proliferation of follicular epithelial cells. And this third antibody, this prevents TSH from binding normally to the receptor. So thus it mimics the action of TSH, and it results in the stimulation of, basically all are leading to increased follicular epithelial cell activity and therefore increased thyroid hormones leading to hyperthyroidism. Okay, let's summarize it again. Autoimmune disease with the breakdown of uh, self helper T cell tolerance, therefore leading to excessive production of autoantibodies. These antibodies will bind to the TSH receptor. This will result in increased levels of thyroid hormones, hyperplasia of the thyroid gland, and thus hyperthyroidism and thyroid gland enlargement. And others, second in the triad of Graves' disease is infiltrative ophthalmopathy. What happens in this? Basically, why the retroorbital connective tissue is increasing? Because there is marked infiltration of these T cells in the retroorbital space. Plus, apart from the inflammation and infiltration by the inflammatory cells, there is edema, swelling, and accumulation of extracellular matrix components, and even increased number of some of fat cells or adipocytes. So this leads to infiltrative ophthalmopathy, leading to exophthalmos in Graves' disease. Okay, so this is the gross picture of thyroid in Graves. So please remember the thyroid is diffusely enlarged when it is affected by Graves, and it may weigh up to 50 to 150 grams, and the surface is homogeneous, unlike in multinodular goiter where there are multiple nodules, which I'll show you later on. Okay, and microscopically, there is diffuse hyperplasia. The follicular epithelial cells are hyperactive. Okay, so there will be proliferation of follicular epithelial cells. This may lead to formation of papillae also, like you can see these finger-like processes, the papillae, and they have fibrovascular cores. Inside the papillae, you can these cores, like this is a papilla, and you can see here, this is a papilla, and there is a fibrovascular core inside that. Okay. And basically the cells are active, so they are tall, columnar, and have basally located round nuclei. And you can see the scalloping because increased production of thyroid hormone is there, so the colloid is scalloped out at the margin because of hyperactivity of the follicular epithelial cells. And sometimes there may be fibrosis as well, but it is rare. It is more common seen in other pathologies, which I'll tell you later on. Okay. And what is the changes in the extrathyroidal tissue? You may find changes. You may find lymphoid hyperplasia because it is an auto because autoimmunity is playing its role. And then heart, eyes, and skin may also show changes. Fine. Laboratory findings. I'm skipping the slide. This will be dealt by Dr. Rosny. Okay. Then coming to hypothyroidism. So when something interferes with the production of adequate levels of thyroid hormone, now it can be clinical. It is around, it forms around 0.3%. It can be subclinical hypothyroidism, which is usually more common, greater than 2% of cases. And again, it increases with age. Females more prone. It can be primary. It can be secondary. The most common causes of primary hypothyroidism are congenital. They can be congenital, acquired, or autoimmune. And basically, there's an enlargement in the size of the thyroid gland. So what this table tells you about the causes. The primary causes, it can be basically there's less production of thyroid, hypothyroidism. So the less production can be maybe there is some development abnormality. Okay, thyroid dysgenesis. The genes, the mutations will be in PAX8, FOXE1. You should remember this. Okay, then they could be congenital biosynthetic defect. There may be defect in the hormone synthesis, this hormonogenetic goiter, or it it could be due to some acquired causes, for example, surgery, radioiodine therapy, or external radiations post ablation, or they can be autoimmune causes. Hashimoto is quite common in the autoimmune causes, or it can be due to iodine deficiency and some drugs intake. And the secondary causes may be due to when there is some central, like pituitary failure, not directly the thyroid gland, but maybe pituitary failure or hypothalamic failure, which is very rare. These are the secondary causes. Okay. Now, congenital hypothyroidism. So, either there is an endemic iodine deficiency in the endemic areas, there is deficiency of iodine in the diet, which is the most common cause of congenital hypothyroidism, or there may be inborn error of thyroid metabolism, like in the synthesis of hormone. Like I told you the steps. One is iodide transport, or in the organification, that is binding of iodide to tyrosine residues, or in the coupling. If any of the step is impaired, then their thyroid metabolism, then the thyroid synthesis is defective, and it will lead to hypothyroidism. Okay. Congenital hypothyroidism, you should remember these genes: thyroid peroxidase genes mutation, or the Pendred syndrome, which also comprises of sensory neural deafness along with hypothyroidism, and the mutation is in SLC26A4 gene. Or there could be thyroid agenesis, and the mutation is in TTF2, FOX, also known as FOXE1, and paired box 8, PAX8, which is seen in thyroid agenesis. Okay. And fourthly, there could be which is rare, but there could be a mutation in the TSH receptor also. And fifthly, thyroid hormone resistance syndrome. What happens in this? It is an autosomal dominant disorder, and in this, there is a generalized resistance to the thyroid hormone. The thyroid hormone is not able to act only, and this also leads to hypothyroidism. And in this case, pituitary is also resistant to the feedback from thyroid hormones. Okay, so this was congenital. Then acquired hypothyroidism, either due to surgery, thyroid gland has been removed only, or radiation-induced ablation of thyroid parenchyma, radioiodine, which is administered for the treatment of hyperthyroidism. It can ultimately lead to hypothyroidism or exogenous irradiation. And you should remember the name of these drugs: methimazole, propylthiouracil, and other agents like lithium, p-aminosalicylic acid. These drugs can also cause acquired hypothyroidism. So you should remember this. Okay. Now coming to this important topic, autoimmune hypothyroidism. Most common cause of hypothyroidism in the iodine sufficient areas. Okay, so in the iodine deficient areas, you will finding mostly the hypothyroidism, and if the the area is sufficient iodine, then most commonly this autoimmune hypothyroidism occurs. And Hashimoto thyroiditis is a common cause. And what are the major antibodies which are found in this disorder? Antimicrosomal, antithyroid peroxidase (TPO), and antithyroglobulin antibodies. And thyroid is typically enlarged, so this also leads to thyroid goitrous swelling. Okay. Now, this autoimmune hypothyroidism may also occur in isolation. It may occur as a part of a syndrome. You don't have to go in detail, but there are autoimmune polyendocrine syndromes 1 and 2. So hypothyroidism, autoimmune hypothyroidism can be a part of that also. Okay, where other organs are also affected by autoimmune disorder. Okay, fine. And this is simple. Secondary hypothyroidism, either there is pituitary failure or there is hypothalamic failure. This can occur maybe when there is a pituitary tumor or postpartum pituitary necrosis, some trauma, or or hypothalamic damage can occur from tumors, again, trauma, radiation therapy, or infiltrative diseases, and this can lead to secondary hypothyroidism. And the classical manifestations of hypothyroidism are cretinism and myxedema. So in detail, Dr. Rosni will tell you, but basically cretinism is hypothyroidism which is occurring in infancy and early childhood, and it is quite commonly occurs due to dietary iodine deficiency in the areas where it is endemic, and rarely it may be occurring due to inborn errors of metabolism. And cretinism is associated with severe mental impairment. Okay, and myxedema usually occurs in older children or adults. It is also known as girl's disease, and it is intermediate. The signs and symptoms are intermediate between cretinism and the adults with hypothyroidism. Okay, now coming to thyroiditis, inflammation. Like we just saw this table. Mm, okay, so we have covered Graves' disease, multinodular goiter. We'll be dealing in the later half. So now we are coming to the causes of thyrotoxicosis, which are not associated with hypothyroidism. That is thyroiditis. Thyroiditis. It could be granulomatous. It could be subacute lymphocytic thyroiditis. Okay. So fine. So basically, itis is inflammation of the thyroid gland. It could be infectious thyroiditis, granulomatous, also known as decurvans thyroiditis. It is acute and painful. You should remember this, that it is acute and painful. Then subacute lymphocytic thyroiditis, chronic lymphocytic, that is Hashimoto's, and fibrous or Riedel's thyroiditis. Okay, so infectious thyroiditis can be acute, where there is direct seeding of the gland. So, for example, there is a pyriform sinus, and through a fistula, there is a direct infection into the gland, leading to inflammation. Or it could be chronic due to mycobacterial, fungal, or pneumocystic infections. More commonly, it is seen in immunocompromised patients. So there will be sudden neck pain, tenderness, fever, chills, etc. But thyroid function is not significantly affected. Hashimoto thyroiditis, it is most common cause of hypothyroidism in iodine sufficient areas. They are, in fact, Hashimoto and Graves, they both are two most common immunologically mediated disorders of the thyroid gland. Hashimoto, again, more common in females between the ages of 45 to 65 years. And there will be circulating antithyroid antibodies in approximately 50% of asymptomatic siblings of Hashimoto patients. Okay. And the most common genes which are related to, one is CTLA4, that is cytotoxic T lymphocyte associated antigen 4 polymorphism, which is a negative regulator of T cell responses. So this, when it negatively regulates the T cell, so this will predispose to the autoimmune disease. And this another gene is protein tyrosine phosphatase 22, that is PTPN 22 gene. Okay, and defect in these genes will lead to, these two genes are most commonly associated with Hashimoto. What is the pathogenesis? Let's see. So basically, there is a breakdown in self tolerance, and therefore increased there is induction of thyroid autoimmunity. So what happens is that mutation occurs in these genes, and these genes are the negative regulator of T cell responses. So these T cell response is not the negative regulation of these T cell response breaks down. Okay, so these T cells become hyperactive. So these T cells, either the CD8 cells, which are cytotoxic T cells, they will lead to T cell mediated cytotoxicity of the thyroid follicular epithelial cells, or CD4 cells, which are the helper cells. They will recruit the macrophages through interferon gamma, and these macrophages will cause injury of the thyroid follicular epithelial cells. Or through the action of plasma cells, there will be an increased production of antibodies, and through this antibody dependent cell mediated cytotoxicity will occur, and basically the end result is damage of the follicular epithelial cells. Okay, so there will be destruction of thyrocytes and ultimately leading to hypothyroidism. Okay, so morphology of Hashimoto, basically it is also diffusely enlarged, and they are not very well demarcated nodules like in multinodular goiter, but you can see very few nodules which are yellow tannin from pale yellow tannin form. Okay, and the capsule is intact. In the microscopy, you can see there's marked lymphoid infiltrate, obviously because there's the negative regulation of the lymphoid cells is inhibited. So there is marked lymphoid infiltrate. In fact, you can also see follicles with germinal center. The pale area inside is the germinal center. Okay. Again, in the higher part, you can see this is the lymphoid infiltrate, and in the center there is germinal center. And the Hürthle cells are also prominent. There is another better picture in the later slides of Hürthle cells. You can appreciate them there. Okay, so microscopically, there is extensive infiltration of the parenchyma by a mononuclear inflammatory infiltrate, and the thyroid follicles are atrophic, lined by Hürthle cells. Okay, there are two variants of Hashimoto. One is the classic, and another is fibrous variant. In the fibrous variant, there is severe fibrosis. But the fibrosis is also seen in Riedel's thyroiditis. How it is differentiated? The fibrosis in the Riedel thyroiditis does not extend beyond the capsule of the gland. Okay. Fine. And the clinical course of Hashimoto, we know that there will be hypothyroidism, but there is transient thyrotoxicosis because there is disruption of thyroid follicles, so there is secondary release of thyroid hormones. Sudden disruption hoga, so there will be release of thyroid hormones, which is also known as Hashitoxicosis. So T4, T3 levels are elevated, but later on hypothyroidism will supervene. T4 and T3 levels will fall, and there will be a compensatory increase in TSH. And you should also remember that Hashimoto can be a risk for mild lymphomas, B cell non-Hodgkin lymphomas. This is also important. Okay, so basically, this is a spectrum. In the Graves' disease, you're seeing hypothyroidism. In the lymphocytic thyroiditis, it can be euthyroid, and Hashimoto's, there's transient thyrotoxicosis, but later on, hypothyroidism supervenes. Okay, then coming to subacute thyroiditis, which is also a cause of thyrotoxicosis without hyperthyroidism. So here, granulomatous thyroiditis or D-Curvan thyroiditis, again, age between 40 to 50 years, females more common. It is triggered by a viral infection like Coxsackie virus, mumps, measles, adeno, etc. The viral antigen will stimulate the cytotoxic, that is CD8 T cells, and again they will damage the follicular cells, and it will lead to, in contrast to autoimmune thyroid disease, this process is self-limited. Okay. And morphologically, the thyroid gland is firm and yellow-white. And you can see here the characteristic granuloma, the epithelioid, slipper-shaped epithelioid cells, and the multinucleated giant cells. Okay, and in this also there's an early phase where there will be micro abscesses comprising of neutrophils, but later on lymphocytes will be there, macrophages, and multinucleated giant cells. You know the pathogenesis of a granuloma. Initially there will be neutrophils, but ultimately the multinucleated giant cells and lymphocytes and epithelial cells they come, and that is granulomatous thyroiditis. Okay, and this most commonly there will be thyroid pain. Clinical features will be dealt in the next section. Okay. Then subacute lymphocytic painless thyroiditis. Again, middle-aged adults, females more common, and there will be lymphocytic infiltration with hyperplastic germinal centers. But remember, Hurther cell is not metaplasia is not very prominent feature. In Hashimoto, it is quite prominent. And you should remember in subacute lymphocytic thyroiditis, anti-thyroid peroxidase antibodies, they are the culprit. Okay. Then Riedl's thyroiditis, you just have to remember that there is extensive fibrosis, and it can involve the thyroid gland and contiguous neck structures as well, and therefore it may simulate a thyroid carcinoma. Again, the presence of anti-thyroid antibodies will give a clue. This is a picture of Riedl thyroiditis. You can see the extensive fibrosis. These are the thyroid follicles, but there is extensive fibrosis in between. Okay, and then there's multinodular goiter. So it will be due to impaired synthesis of thyroid hormones, most commonly by dietary iodine deficiency, compensatory rise in TSH levels, hypertrophy and hyperplasia of the thyroid follicular cells, and gross enlargement of the thyroid gland. And if congenital biosynthetic defect or there's endemic iodine deficiency, the compensatory response may be inadequate to overcome the impairment, and this results in goitrous hypothyroidism. So basically, first of all, before multinodular goiter, let's see what diffuse simple goiter. Basically, it can be endemic in the areas which contain low levels of iodine, or sporadic where there is ingestion of substances that interfere with thyroid hormone synthesis. So endemic or sporadic. And two phases are there in diffuse non-toxic goiter: hyperplastic phase and involution phase. In the hyperplastic phase, the gland is hyperplastic. The gland is diffusely enlarged, and the follicles are lined by crowded follicular epithelial cells. So this gives a picture similar to Graves' disease. But later on, when the dietary iodine subsequently normalizes or the demand for thyroid hormone decreases, then the follicular epithelial cells will involute. So ultimately, they will become rich in colloid, and that is known as colloid goiter. So, okay, so goiter has two stages: hyperplastic phase and involution phase. Okay, and clinically it is euthyroid. And what is then multinodular goiter? When there is this recurrent episodes of hyperplasia, involution, again hyperplasia and involution, so it will lead to irregular enlargement of the thyroid. So there will be multiple nodules which are enlarged, and like you can see here in this picture, the thyroid gland normally weighs 15 to 20 grams, but here these multinodular goiters can weigh more than 1 kg, and you can see there are multiple nodules. All right, and some of the nodules they contain gelatinous colloid is also present, and some may even lead to hemorrhage, leading to this brown material. This is hemorrhage. Okay, this is the gross which is shown to you in which is present in the museum. This is also of multinodular goiter. There are multiple nodules, like you can see in this picture. Okay, and it can involve it can involve one lobe far more than the other, and the goiter may grow behind the sternum, and it may become very large, so it may produce intrathoracic or plunging goiter. Okay, and older lesions may have areas of hemorrhage, fibrosis, calcification, and even cystic changes. In the microscopy, you can see Microscopically also multiple nodules are seen. This is one nodule, another nodule, and they are variably sized follicles. And even some follicles are filled with, may grow up and it is filled with colloid, and this is leading to the formation of colloid cyst. And sometimes there is fibrosis also. These are variably sized follicles, and here you can see in this picture there is a fibrosis, right? Okay, so basically, microscopically, you are seeing colloid-rich follicles also, which are lined by flattened inactive epithelium, and some areas of follicular hyperplasia. They are degenerative changes as well, and um, one of the DTs is follicular neoplasm. But usually in the follicular neoplasms, a prominent capsule is present between the nodules and the residual parenchyma. In the neoplasm, it is not present. Okay, and clinical features I am not telling. Okay, now coming to neoplasms, it could be follicular adenoma, Hodel cell adenoma, and malignant neoplasms like follicular carcinoma, papillary thyroid carcinoma, medullary thyroid carcinoma, and anaplastic thyroid carcinoma. So, follicular adenoma, it is benign, solitary, encapsulated. It is surrounded by a rim of normal thyroid. It shows follicular differentiation. It generally occurs in adults. It is more common in females. It is common in iodine deficient areas. It is and the capsule is usually very thin. Okay. So basically, how to differentiate follicular adenoma and follicular carcinoma? So there will be a capsule in adenoma, and there is no capsular invasion or vascular invasion in adenoma. And like you can see, they are variably sized follicles, but this capsule, this fibrocollagenous tissue kind of thing, this capsule is intact. Okay, it is not invaded. And Hurdle cell adenoma, basically, it is also similar, but the cells are different. The cells comprise of Hurdle cells, and these cells are they have brightly eosinophilic and granular cytoplasm. Like in this picture, you can see these are the Hurdle cells, and they have brightly eosinophilic and granular cytoplasm. All right, and you should also remember the name of the mutations. Don't go in much detail, but just remember that RET-PTC mutation is associated with papillary carcinoma, RET with medullary, PAX8 PPARG with follicular carcinoma. Just remember this, okay? Fine. And follicular carcinoma, you can see it is a malignant. There will be, like in this picture, you can see this is the capsule and it is invaded. Okay, again here it is invaded. So this is how it is different from the follicular adenoma, and this is a vessel, and there is vascular invasion as well. Okay, so basically follicular carcinoma, these are malignant epithelial tumors which show follicular differentiation and lack features of papillary thyroid carcinoma, and they again present as a thyroid swelling, thyroid neck mass, most commonly in fifth decade, female preponderance, increased incidence in iodine deficient areas. There is the lymph node metastasis is relatively uncommon, and it is more commonly seen in the papillary type of thyroid carcinoma. Coming to papillary thyroid carcinoma, it goes by the name the papillary. So they will be like in this picture, you can see there are papillary excrescences in the gross picture here also, and often it is white and firm masses. It may there is presence of psammoma bodies, which are calcium deposits in the papillary thyroid carcinoma. So there the gross may be gritty as well. Okay, and sometimes the PTC may become cystic. Okay, and they have increased propensity. You should remember this, to invade the lymphatics. Okay, like this is the microscopic picture. You can see here in there are multiple papillae. This is a papillae with a central fibrovascular core, and the nuclear features are very specific. You can see in the nuclei there is clearing. There is optical clearing, and this is known as often ani-I nuclei. And plus, there you can see there is an inclusion also, intranuclear inclusion, and this is the picture of psammoma body. Okay, calcium deposit. Fine. Coming to medullary thyroid carcinoma, it is derived from parafollicular C cells. You should remember, you are aware of men syndrome. It is a part of that, and it forms a firm white mass in the thyroid, and this is a microscopic picture. The pink hyaline material, colloid, it is very specific for medullary carcinoma. And I also told you in the beginning, the chromogranin stain that stains the parafollicular C cells, that is also specific for medullary thyroid carcinoma. And lastly, anaplastic thyroid carcinoma, it is least common malignancy. It occurs in very elderly individuals, most aggressive, rapidly growing. It can cause dysphagia and dyspnea when it involves esophagus and trachea. And mutation is in P53 gene. There will be large areas of hemorrhage and necrosis in the gross. And this is the microscopic picture. You can see the nuclear features. The cells are highly malignant, and it can invade the adjacent structures. And like in this picture, um, you can see there are large areas of necrosis as well. And here vascular necrosis is there. Okay. So this concludes the first section. I'll hand over to Dr. Rosmi for describing the clinical features. And Dr. Rosmi, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Shruti. So after we have gained a lot of knowledge about and lot of background information about how uh, thyroid hormone is being synthesized and what and all other diseases or the names, we have got the names of lot of diseases. But now we go on to the part where we will learn or we'll come to know how these patients will come to you in the OPD or the emergency situation. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
So the first thing we are going to know is about what is, we have learned a lot about hypothyroidism. Now, how does hypothyroidism come to us to the OPD? So as we all know, just a brief this thing that Hashimoto's thyroiditis, it is an autoimmune condition and it is the most common cause of hypothyroidism. Initially, the gland is goiter. Goiter is nothing but an enlarged thyroid gland. Everybody has a thyroid with a normal size, but that increases in size and you are able to see it. That is called as a goitrous thyroid gland. And as the disease progresses, after some time, it will become atrophied or shrunken. So that time, as was already mentioned, it becomes firm in consistency. So what is a firm consistency? If you touch the tip of your nose, the feeling which you get is the firm consistency. So somebody who's had a thyroiditis will later on when they come to you in the OPD, if you touch the neck swelling, you will find that it will be similar to consistency of your tip of the nose. So that is what is firm in consistency. So it is said that it is annual incidence. Why am I telling it is 1 every 4 person in 1,000 females will have a Hashi as compared to men. That is, in 1,000 only one man will have. So it means the disease is more common in the female. And there is something called as a subclinical hypothyroidism. It means the patient does not have symptoms, but his lab investigations are abnormal. We have a lot of patients coming to the OPD who generally have a habit of getting investigations done. कि हर 2-3 महीने में एक बारी मैं test करा लेता हूँ, and that test will show some abnormality and they will come to. That is the scenario where you call it subclinical hypothyroidism. That is, there is no symptom, but they had done a test randomly and it came out to be abnormal. Then after subclinical, it means it will become overt. Yani there will be manifestations of the thyroid. So people who are subclinically hypothyroid with an anti-TPO antibody positivity will later on become positive or manifest symptoms of thyroid in at least 4% of patients. So how do they come to you? In the OPD, generally the patients will come with a complaint of tiredness. हमेशा थकान रहती है. This is one common complaint which all the thyroid people will complain. They will say कि skin जो है बहुत dry है. Many people will be for cosmetic reasons will also go to the dermatologist की dry skin है. They will get some medications some creams or some emollients, they will always say complain of feeling cold. That is, everybody else is fine with the fan, but they find it cold. So they want the fan to be reduced or they want the fan to be switched off. So apart from that, poor memory. So many people will be like कि पहले तो सब काम ठीक से हो रहा था बट नाउ आई हैव स्टार्टेड फॉरगेटिंग, अब भूलने लग गया. सो वेल एजुकेटेड, इवन लेस एजुकेटेड और हाउसवाइफ, दे विल से कि पहले तो घर का सारा काम आराम से होता था, अब मैं भूलने लगी हूँ चीजें. सो दैट इज पुअर मेमोरी इज अनदर complaint in hypothyroid patients. Then is the complaint is constipation. Patient will generally say कि I am not able to pass stools, and if I am passing, they are very hard. I have to strain. So that is constipation. Then weight gain. A lot of girls will come to the OPD with this complaint कि weight gain हो रहा है, and all of us will also have the first thought is thyroid करा लो इसका. So that is the another complaint with which patients with hypothyroid will come to you in the OPD. Then is hoarse voice. This might not be a complaint of the patient, but when the attendant is coming to you, and you hear the voice and you ask, "Awaaz aisi thi?" So the patient will tell ki no, there is a change. Attendant will say there is a change in the voice. It has become a bit harsh or hoarse, and or a rough kind of a voice, and they have slowed in speech. It means if you have to ask a person's name, supposedly it is Sonali. So Sonali will say, so now it will take a lot of time for her to say, though she's understanding your question, but she's taking a lot of time to say the answer. So there will be a slowness, generalized slowness in what you are doing. Then there is menorrhagia. So all the females, when they come to the OPD, as and when you go to the clinics, you will come to know that for every female, whatever be the presentation, you have to ask a menstrual history. So in a person who is having no other complaints, but just the patient is having menorrhagia, they are visiting gynae OPD, so they will complain that they are having lot of bleeding every month. So initially it was just 2 or 3 days, and she was only changing sanitary napkins like two or three, but now she has to change more than 4 or 5, and she's very uncomfortable. She's saying it is bleeding a lot, she's coughing clots. So that is one complaint, menorrhagia. But as the disease progresses and if it is not identified, these patients may also later on present with oligomenorrhea or decrease in menstruation. And later on, and married females who are coming to the gynae OPD who are not having any live child or any live issue. So their complaint is that they are having infertility. They're not able to conceive. And if they are able to conceive, they are not able to carry forward the pregnancy. So this is another complaint with hypothyroid patients. This should make you to suspect that there is a possibility thyroid abnormality is there. So you should keep it in the back of your mind that I am going to send an investigation, which is the thyroid function test. And another thing is impaired hearing. So like in the morning, you were taught about something called as a Pendred syndrome. It is an inherited disorder. So here we came to know that there is a sensory neural hearing loss. But thyroid can also produce a conductive hearing loss. So the hearing loss produced by a thyroid abnormality can be both a conductive or a sensory neural hearing loss. What is conductive and what is sensory neural? This will be taught to you in ENT, or when you come to the OPDs, we will teach you. So, am I clear? Are you people able to follow?
Yes, ma'am.
Then, with all these history, now the patient has told something which the patient tells you is the symptom. Something which you identify in the patient is a sign. So after hearing all these complaints, ki doctor saab vazan badh raha hai, or periods are not regular, or I'm having excess bleeding, I'm feeling excessively cold, having constipation, you have a suspicion. Now this is thyroid abnormality. So aap kya karoge? What will you look for? So you are going to look at the skin of the person. You will find a dry, rough, coarse skin. Normally in winters, all of us will have a dryness. So these people will have that dryness throughout the year. It is perennial for them. Okay. So they will have that. If you touch the fingers and hands, they are colder as compared to yours. So they will be a cool extremity. Look at the face, it will be swollen. ऐसा लगा है सूजा हुआ है, ठीक है ना? So facial puffiness. Or if you look at the lower limbs, you will find that there is edema. Edema is nothing but lower limb swelling because of fluid collection. So that is one thing which you will find. I have mentioned serous cavity effusions. These cavities can be any. It can be in the pericardial sac. It can be in the pleural sac. Okay? Even in the middle ear, fluid can collect. So all serous effusions can be there. And since they are generalized slow, if you take a knee hammer and tap onto the tendons, you will find there is a very delayed relaxation. When you have done it in physiology, the moment you hit yourself on the tendon, there will be a sudden contraction and sudden relaxation. Here, actually, both the contraction and the relaxation are delayed. But what is beautifully seen is the delayed relaxation. Okay, am I clear? Are you people there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Then after these signs, what you are supposed to do, you have to look at the neck, do a physical examination of the thyroid. So the most common thing which you will see in the clinics is the physician will tell swallow. Ask the patient ki thuk gatak ke dikhao ya pani pee ke dikhao. So you will see the swelling will move up and down when the patient is swallowing. So the swelling will move with deglutition. So that is one thing that will tell you that it is a thyroid swelling. Okay. Then after that, you have to examine, you will palpate, you will come to know about the consistency, if there is any warmth, if it is very vascular, it will be warm. Okay, and there will be, if you put your hand, certain times you'll be able to feel a bruit. It is just a palpable uh, feeling. It is as if some purring of a cat below your finger. It is something like that. So that is one thing which you will get. If you take the blood pressure, so you will tie the cuff, and in a hypothyroid patient, you will find a hypertension. So mind you, every patient of thyroid, whether it is a hypothyroid or a hyperthyroid, you are supposed to check the BP, and you are expecting a hypertension. That is a raised BP in both of them. Okay, it will be a systolic rise if it is a hyperthyroid. It will be a diastolic rise if it is a hypothyroid. And if you put your hand on the pulse, you will find that there is bradycardia or the rate is less. So it will be less than 60. So that is one thing you will get to know. Okay. So I have mentioned if there is a Hashimoto's goiter, it will be diffuse. That is, entire gland will be enlarged, not just one lobe. Both the lobes along with the isthmus will be enlarged. So it is a diffuse Hashimoto's goiter, which is firm. That is, the consistency will be like that of the. How will it feel when you touch a Hashi goiter? Anybody? It will be firm. It will feel like the tip of your nose. Okay. So next is, now with all these information, now you've decided that I have to evaluate this patient for thyroid. Hypothyroidism is what I am suspecting. So I will send a certain set of blood investigations. So these are called as the TFTs. In short, everybody will be writing in the OPD a TFT, that is thyroid function test. So what will you do? You will measure the TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Okay, if you send a thyroid stimulating hormone, and you find that TSH is elevated. Now you know, we have already known that there is a negative feedback loop. When the gland is producing sufficient, there will be a inhibition of the TSH. But if TSH is rising, it means probably the gland is not producing sufficient, so it has risen. So then you send the FT4, that is the unbound or the free form of the T4. Okay, then if you find that T4 is also low, TSH is high and T4 is low, if this is the combination which you're finding in the investigation, then you identify the patient as a case of primary hypothyroid. Now, I mentioned earlier that there is something called as a subclinical hypothyroidism. It means patient is clinically fine, but when he went in for an investigation, so he found that there is something abnormal. He has run to you and come कि डॉक्टर साहब मुझे थायराइड की बीमारी हो गई है क्या? So how do you identify that subclinical hypothyroidism? In that scenario, TSH will be elevated, but you will find that the FT4 is normal. Okay, TSH is elevated and FT4 is normal. So then that is called as a subclinical hypothyroid. Generally, the elevations or the normal values is 0.4 to 4.5 or around 5 international units. So, but in case of a subclinical hypothyroid, this TSH value will be somewhere between 5 and 10. So you find the TSH is elevated, but T4 is normal. So you think in terms of a subclinical hypothyroid. Now the next question, the patient will not go away. He will say, कि पर ये abnormal है तो आप मेरा इलाज करोगे? So that is the question the patient will ask. So now you have to tell him, will you or will you not? So in such a scenario, you will go in for an anti-TPO antibody test. So if that test comes out to be positive, so here I am telling anti-TPO antibody test, if it comes out to be positive, it means there is an autoimmune phenomenon to it. And as I already mentioned in the second slide, 4% of the subclinical hypothyroid patients will develop overt hypothyroidism if they are anti-TPO positive. So in this scenario, somebody who is subclinical hypothyroid without any symptom but an anti-TPO positive, you will treat. So if the patient asks कि अब मैंने thyroid की report कराई है, आप इलाज करोगे? You will tell कि I will send another investigation. If this investigation also comes out to be positive, then I am going to treat you. Okay. So what is the treatment you are going to provide? You have to replace the hormone. There is a deficiency of the thyroxine hormone, so you provide the patient with thyroxine. So I have mentioned the replacement dose. As and when you come to the clinics, you will come to know how you calculate these doses. But you should remember the thyroxine hormone is to be taken empty stomach early in the morning. And there has to be, some books say, some people say it is half an hour gap between breakfast and this tablet. But as advisable, it is said that if the first thing you do after getting up in the morning is to take the tablet, and after 2 hours only are you supposed to take food. Even tea, coffee, or calcium supplements or iron supplements, they should not be taken along with the drug. So you take thyroxine, go about doing all your work, then you have breakfast after 1 or 2 hours. So this is the advice which you are supposed to give to somebody who's taking a thyroid hormone tablet. And these tablets, they come in dark black bottles. So it means they have to be protected from sunlight. So they have to be kept in cool and dark place in your home. That is somewhere in a drawer or in a cupboard, something like that, but not in kitchens. That is one thing we all should know. And you can tell even your relatives if they ask you how this drug has to be taken. And how do you, after giving the drug, the patient will ask, ab kab tak chalegi? Badhaoge ki ghataoge? So this is another question the patient will ask you. So you will tell them, you take this medicine and after 2 months you come again and we will send a test called as only TSH. Now we are not sending an FT4 here. This is important. So we are going to do a dose adjustment using only the TSH levels. After giving the drug, so if you are providing thyroxine, there should again the negative feedback loop should be activated. TSH should come down. So your drug is effective, your treatment is effective means when after 2 months the patient comes, TSH level will come down. Okay, and every 6 to 8 weeks, that is around every 2 months, you can get the test to be done. Okay. So this is how I put some pictures. So the first picture you see there is a facial puffiness. A generalized slowing is there. The expression is as if she's bored or very slowed down. So this is one feature of hypothyroidism. The skin appears to be pale, bit whitish or yellowish in color. So that is also a feature of hypothyroidism. Then in the next picture, you can see that there is decreased hair. There is fall of hair. That is called as alopecia. And if you closely look at the picture, the hair quality is not very good. It is a frizzy, brittle, lusterless. It does not have that shine. So normally the hair we all want and what we see in the TV ads is you have bright and bright hair which is dark and lustrous. Here the hair will not have any luster. They are dry, frizzy, and easily breakable. So that is what the hair of hypothyroid is. And this is not just about the hair on your head, but even the eyebrows, they are also brittle. So they break off. So that is why there is something called as madrosis or the loss of lateral parts of the eyebrow. Okay. Then you look at the skin here, they appear dry and coarse. Okay. So this is how the hypothyroid patient will look when you come to the when they come to you in the OPD. So after all this, now you have done the TFT, you have identified the disease, you have started the treatment, and you again work her up to identify what has caused this hypothyroidism, whether it is Hashi or whether it is because patient has undergone a surgery or there was a radioiodine ablation or patient was on a drug. So etiology you will again work up. So next we learned is about hyperthyroidism. Here the gland is overworking. There the gland was not working well. So there is the word hyperthyroidism and thyrotoxicosis normally are interchangeably used, but they have different meanings. So what is the difference? As was already told in the morning, in hyperthyroidism, the gland is functioning excessively. So gland is overworking. Okay, now it is all the time producing despite knowing that it already has good amount of hormone in its store. But in thyrotoxicosis, it is not necessary that the gland is hyperfunctioning. Gland is having functioning normally, but all of a sudden, due to some insult or some injury, whatever amount of thyroid it has produced and stored in itself will be released all of a sudden. So there is a sudden state of thyroid hormone excess. Though that amount is normally present in your body, stored in the thyroid gland and released in small quantities, it is like putting an FD in a bank and getting interest every month, thoda thoda. That is how the gland is functioning. But all of a sudden, here it is like it has been taken out. The entire amount has been drawn out from the bank. So entire thyroid gland will pour out its store of thyroxine hormone, and that will produce a state of excess hormone. So that is thyrotoxicosis. So these two terms are different. Now this picture I have taken from the slide which Dr. Shruti had shown to you. So I'll thank her for the slide. And causes of thyrotoxicosis has been mentioned. So madam has highlighted associated with hyperthyroidism and not associated with hyperthyroidism. That is what I was trying to tell. If there is hyperthyroidism, it means your gland is functioning extra. But if there is no hyperthyroidism, that is your gland is not functioning extra, but whatever was there with you, it has in the gland, it has been released all of a sudden. So that is, there is thyrotoxicosis or symptoms or signs that suggest that you have excess hormone in your blood, but the gland is normal. So that is not associated with hyperthyroidism, but there is thyrotoxicosis. So this is this table you can learn and remember the causes. Next is, so Graves' disease, the most important and a classical example when we talk of a hyperthyroid patient is Graves' disease. So, and as has been mentioned, it is around 60 to 80% of cases who come to you in the emergency or they come to you in the OPD, they are who are having thyrotoxicosis will come out to be a Graves. So, and as mentioned, it is found in places where there is sufficient amount of iodine to the population. Again, I have mentioned a ratio, female is to male is 10:1. With this itself, we should understand that this is also an autoimmune disease. Autoimmune Hashi was also an autoimmune disease, but both had a female preponderance. So as and when you keep reading Robbins and when you come to clinical side, you will find that autoimmune conditions are generally more common in the female gender. So this information is also provided to you. See, autoimmune diseases are common in female and thyroid disorders per se are more common in female as compared to male. So Graves' disease is more common in female. So if there are 10 females, so in a population of hyperthyroidism, all the 10 will have Graves probably, and one of them might, and one male only will have a hyperthyroidism. That is probably because of Hashi. So we should also remember Graves generally is a disease which occurs in the age group of 20 to 50 years, but that does not mean that it will not occur in elderly. It is more common in 20 to 50 years of age group, but it can occur in an elderly. That is something we have to remember. Are you people able to understand what I'm trying to tell, or is it very fast?
We can understand, ma'am.
So now, if you read Robbins, they will mention कि there is a triad of Graves' disease. Triad का क्या मतलब है? ये तीन फीचर एक साथ अगर प्रेजेंट है तो ये ग्रेव्स हो सकते हैं. So that is a triad. अब ये तीन एक साथ प्रेजेंट होंगे तो मुझे मालूम है हाँ ये ग्रेव्स है and I will think in terms of Graves. So what is the triad? first part of the triad or a triangle is there will be a goiter. The disease will have an enlargement of the thyroid gland. So to say Graves, there has something to do with the thyroid gland. So gland will be enlarged. It is a soft gland. So soft means if you touch your ear lobule and you touch the gland, this is what they will have a similar feeling. So that is how you will find a Graves gland. It will be soft and the entire gland is enlarged. It is a diffuse enlargement. Okay. And if it is vascular, if you touch, generally Graves is actually vascular. So when you touch the gland, it will be warm as compared to the rest of your body. And if it is long standing, that is something which has been there for a very long time. So it will leave its mark. So this disease Grave itself will leave its mark on the gland. So when you touch, there will be a nodular surface. So it will not be smooth. It will be bit irregular, but only when it is a long-standing condition. And you can hear and palpate. You can hear a bruit and you can palpate a thrill. Okay, so it tells bruit being there and a thrill being there tells you that the gland is highly vascular. Okay, next, after this is one part of the triad. So what else can you find? There is something called as a thyroid ophthalmopathy. That is something to do with the eye. It is said that in thyroid patients, 25% of patients with Graves' disease will have ophthalmopathy. So this ophthalmopathy has a lot of manifestations. How will be the patient? What will be the complaints? They will be saying ki staring look will be there. Okay? Some people will say ki there is a dryness in the eye. So there are classification scales, clinical activities forced to go about in identifying ophthalmopathy. One which you will very commonly come to know and you all should remember, also given in Robbins, is something called as a no specs scoring system. I will not go into the detail of it, but it will tell about whether only the eyelid is involved or whether there is edema around the eyes or if the eyeball is bulging out. Proptosis. Badi badi aankhein dikhti hain, ekdam as if somebody is trying to stare at you. The person is not trying to stare. The eye has become because of that. That is one thing. And there is something called as a dermopathy. The name itself tells that it has something to do with the skin. And dermopathy is not a very common finding in Graves. It is hardly found in some 5% of the population. And generally, if dermopathy is present, it will be associated with an ophthalmopathy. Moderate to severe ophthalmopathy will also be there. So this is the triad of Graves' disease. So there is a goiter, there is an ophthalmopathy, and there is a dermopathy. If somebody likes to know more eponyms, so I can tell this triad is called as Merzberg triad, if you want to remember. It is not necessary, but it is called as a Merzberg triad. Now, after knowing all this, what does the patient come to you with? When you're sitting in an OPD or an emergency situation, this patient will come. The attendant will bring, बहुत गुस्सा करता है, हर चीज में जल्दी है, and you will see the patient is sitting in front of you and fidgeting around, and whatever you ask, he's irritable, though he's answering, but he's irritable. So hyperactivity, irritability, or sometimes the patients will say कि हाथ कांप रहे हैं, कपकपी हो रही है, ठीक है, and if you put out the hand, you will find that there are tremors present. So that is one thing that you will find. Or hyperreflexia, like as I told in hypothyroidism, if you elicit, there will be a delayed contraction and a delayed relaxation. Here it will be brisk and fast. So that is one thing in hyperthyroidism. And if you put your hand on the pulse, there was a bradycardia or a generalized slowing of the pulse. Here it will be fast pulse, tachycardia. And when you are doing something fast, there is a chance of doing an error. Similarly, if the heart is beating fast, there is a chance that it will produce a rhythm which is not normal. So that is arrhythmia. So that is why patients with hyperthyroidism might manifest with an atrial fibrillation. Okay. Or if you take the blood pressure, I mentioned earlier also, both in hypo and in hyper, when you take the vitals, that is, you measure the blood pressure, you will expect only a hypertension. If it is a hyperthyroid patient, your systolic will be high. But if it is a hypothyroid patient, your diastolic will be high. So here I am saying that there is a wide pulse pressure. It means the difference between systolic and diastolic is more than 40. So there is a wide pulse and there is high output cardiac failure. So patient will have shortness of breath and all components of cardiac failure will be present. And otherwise the patient will be like कि जो भी खाता हूँ बार बार लैट्रिन जाना पड़ता है. This is another complaint they will come with. Diarrhea. ठीक है. It is not कि patient is having any infection or something, but what there is a hypermotility. The peristalsis is fast, so there is a generalized increase in intestinal motility. And since whatever you are eating and you are going to toilet very fast, so there is no nutrient absorption. So there is steatorrhea also, and these patients will lose weight. They will say, I eat a lot, but मेरा weight नहीं बढ़ता. ठीक है ना? So that is one thing the patient might complain or the parents might complain. Then respiratory system, they might say complaints of dyspnea. This dyspnea can be part of a diaphragmatic muscle weakness or can be because of heart failure. Then blood picture, you can increase thrombotic state. Thrombotic state means the blood there is a chance of clots forming all of a sudden. So deep vein thrombosis, you will come to learn about it later, might occur in a hyperthyroid patient. And I have mentioned why this is occurring. It is because of an increase in factor 8, 9, 10, von Willebrand factor. All these things will contribute to it. There will be anemia also, and there can be thrombocytopenia if you do a CBC or a complete blood count. So this kind of a picture you will get. And reproductive. Other complaint which these patients will come to you with is probably in a gynae OPD or even with in the medicine OPD, these females will come with complaint, I don't have a regular menstrual cycle. I have very few days of bleeding. Initially they were normal and now they are hardly there for a day or two and I hardly have to change a pad in a day. So that is one complaint these patients will give you. Or otherwise these, if it is a female patient, she will say that she is not able to conceive a child. So she's not able to get pregnant. So a young married couple, very distressed, they might come to the OPD and with a complaint of reproductive abnormality. But then that also should make you to think, or it should strike that you have to evaluate the thyroid for them. Then some females will be like, I'm able to conceive, I become pregnant, but then I'm never able to carry the pregnancy till term. That is 9 months of gestation is not there for me. So it is because there is a chance of spontaneous abortion. She will say कि अपने आप बच्चा खराब हो जाता है, मतलब पेट से तो हो जाती हूँ लेकिन बच्चा बार-बार खराब हो जाता है. So there is a bad obstetric history, a bad gynecological history is there. Then in men, it might produce gynecomastia. So the breast tissue might look enlarged. So that young boys who are having hyperthyroidism or Graves will have an enlarged breast tissue. So that affects their image of their own body, and they are very worried. I look abnormal as compared to the peer group or my colleagues, my friends. They are all having six packs, and see I am having chest swelling. It is like a female chest. So gynecomastia is the enlargement of the breast tissue or the glandular tissue. Breast glandular tissue enlargement is gynecomastia, and that is what is seen in a male patient. Okay, so here now in such a scenario, you will again think in terms of a thyroid abnormality with all these complaints. I am having palpitation, या बार-बार दस्त हो रहे हैं, वजन नहीं बढ़ रहा, I am not able to conceive. These are all the complaints. जब you get all these history, then you think, okay, I am going to send a thyroid function test for this person. So you have to anticipate कि जब ये report आएगी तो what will I get to see? So here what you are sending is TSH and FT4. That is the free or the unbound fraction of the T4 thyroid hormone. So can somebody point out a mistake which is there in the slide? No. So the step 2, I have written that TSH is elevated. Actually, if the gland is producing extra, TSH will be elevated or decreased?
I'm decreased.
So that is the mistake. So it have purposely done that. So if your people are not interested, but you should look at this. Okay, TSH will be decreased and FT4 will be increased. Okay, So you are expecting a thyrotoxicosis patient will have a very low TSH and a very high T4. So there you think in terms of a primary thyrotoxicosis or a hyperthyroidism, and then you can go in for evaluation of a Graves or a nodular goiter. So etiology is different, but this is what you get. There is excess of hormone. Similar, but if there is a scenario where TSH is low, but FT4 is normal, something like a subclinical, there was a subclinical hypothyroid. Here you have a subclinical hyperthyroid. Means TSH is reduced, but T4 is normal. Patient is not having any symptom. So here you will follow up the patient. And there is another thing which madam has already taught you all, something about a thyroid TSH secreting adenoma and something regarding a TSH resistance, thyroid hormone resistance. In this, TSH will be normal or high. In both these conditions, your TSH will be normal or high, but your FT4 will also be high. Normally, both of them will go in the opposite direction. If TSH is increasing, it means FT4 is reduced or come hai, या कम है. But अगर दोनों ही बढ़ रहे हैं, TSH is also increasing and FT4 is also increasing. So there is hyperthyroidism. But how do you attribute to this to? Probably pituitary में कोई tumor है. There is some tumor in the pituitary because TSH is actually coming from the pituitary. So TSH is also increasing and FT4 is also increasing, and there is something called as a thyroid hormone resistance. I will not go into the details of it because it will become even more confusing then. Okay. So now we talked about the TFT. Now we have come. We also know that there is something called as a TSH, a receptor antibody, about which you all know that this is the major culprit or the major antibody that is causing the gland to overact in case of a Graves' disease. So when do you do a TSH receptor test, TSH receptor antibody test for a person? If you find a pregnant female in your OPD and she says that you know that she's had a history of Graves, or at presently she's having Graves, so you will measure the TSH receptor antibody TRAB level. Why? Because these antibodies will cross the placenta. So that is why you will do, and if it crosses the placenta, it is going to affect the child also. So that is why you are going you have to identify whether the candidate might have a baby who's having a neonatal thyrotoxicosis or a neonatal Graves. So there you will go in for a TSH receptor antibody test. And in a Graves disease, after you instill the treatment, you want to see कि अब कोई improvement हुआ कि नहीं, or if the patient is attaining remission or not. Improvement के लिए आप you will do TFT, but has the disease progressed or is it improving? So उसके लिए you will get a TSH receptor antibody. Then there is something called as a thalamus. In Graves disease, both the eyes will be affected together. But if somebody with a unilateral or a single eye being affected, then also you are supposed to do a TSH receptor antibody. So what will happen? What is the clinical course? It was already told, but I will reinforce कि for Graves, the treatment is of a long duration. It is not कि in a month or in 2 months it will be normal. So patient will ask you, अब मैं कितने दिन और ये दवा खाऊं? So you'll have to tell it takes a long time. So it is around 18 months that the disease will take to improve or disappear or remit. So even after 18 months, only 50% of patients will have a remission or symptom improvement. 50% will not have. So whom do you expect ki there will be improvement? If you are finding a female patient, there is chances of improvement. It is a better prognostic indicator or for remission. If the person is not a smoker, even if it is a male patient, but he does not smoke, so there is a chance it will remit faster. The size of the goiter is small, and the initial levels of TSH receptor antibody was low. So somebody who's having supposedly TSH receptor antibody value is 25 for 1 and 250 for 1. The one with 25 will have a faster chance and better chance of improvement in the disease. And 5 to 10% of Graves will also become permanently hypothyroid. Okay? It can be because of the drug you are giving, or can be per se because of the disease itself. And if you don't treat, then it is high mortality. The chances of patient dying is 10 to 30%. So that is one thing very important, that if you identify the disease, you treat the disease. Then there is something, how do you treat? You will give anti-thyroid drugs. There are a lot of anti-thyroid drugs. I will name only few. That is propylthiouracil and carbamazole. This is what we normally use in the OPDs, and you'll be learning about how they act in your pharmacology classes. And if after giving drug there is no improvement or there is no remission, then you go for a definitive therapy. That is a radioiodine ablation or a thyroidectomy, or go for a surgery and remove the gland. Okay. As I mentioned, in hypothyroidism, you monitor by checking the TSH level. In hyperthyroidism, you monitor by FT4 and FT3 levels and not TSH, because it will take time for the TSH to come to normal. Okay. So in a hypothyroid patient, TSH is what you check for follow-up. But in a hyperthyroid patient, the monitoring is basically done with an FT4 and an FT3. So here I have shown you a picture. This is the Merzberg triad. So if you see the patient, big eyes, this is exophthalmos. Okay, staring look is there. And if you see the neck of the person, okay, there is a goiterous enlargement. Ophthalmopathy is there. And the next I have shown a dermopathy, dry. There is pretibial mixed edema. This is what is pretibial mixed edema. So this is what will be there. So this is the triad of Graves' disease. Thank you. I hope it was clear to all of you. Dr. Sapna Meena.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell me something about hypothyroid? If a person comes to you in the OPD, what will be the complaint he will have?
Ma'am, the tiredness and the dry skin and the brittle hairs, and ma'am also, uh, yes, ma'am.
देखोगे, पूछोगे क्या या पेशेंट बताएगा क्या? टायर्डनेस बताएगा, कॉन्स्टिपेशन बताएगा, और
Ma'am, usually the dry skin.
हाँ, कॉन्स्टिपेशन, मेंस्ट्रुअल इरेगुलरिटी, ये बताएंगे, है ना?
Yes, ma'am.
बीपी कैसा होगा इन हाइपोथायरॉइड? रुचि, डॉक्टर रुचि.
Yes, ma'am.
What will happen to the blood?
Ma'am, BP will be raised. Ma'am, there
Which
will be
one?
hypertension.
Which,
Ma'am, diastolic BP will be raised.
the pulse?
Ma'am, there will be bradycardia.
Okay, very good. There will be a bradycardia. And what about the reflexes?
Ma'am, there will be delayed reflexes.
Delayed contraction and relaxation. Okay. Can you tell something about hyperthyroidism?
Yes, ma'am. In hyperthyroidism, the patient will present as irritable and irritable, and there will be tachycardia, hypertension, systolic BP will be raised, and there will be diarrhea in the patient, and
Okay.
due to which there will be nutritional malnutrition can occur in patient, and in female there will be menstrual irregularity.
Infertility?
Yes, ma'am.
Infertility.
Infertility and decreased libido.
So if there is hyperthyroidism, what will happen to TSH?
Ma'am, TSH will be low.
And what will happen to FT4?
Ma'am, FT4 will be raised.
And if it is subclinical hyperthyroid, what happens to the TSH?
Ma'am, TSH will be low, but FT4 will be normal.
Okay, good. Very good. Okay. I hope you people have been able to understand, and if there is doubt, you can please come to the ward wherever you want and ask. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, thank you. Dr. Shruti? I think the class is over. People can take the attendance and send